Dear students, after studying this module, you shall be able to know what is victimology, what are the different types of victims, how to protect the victims, and what is the science of victimology. First, the introduction and history of victimology. Victimology is the study of victimization, including the relationships between victims and offenders, the interactions between victims and the criminal justice system, that is, the police and the courts, and amendments bureaucrats, and the association between sufferers and the other social groups and organizations such as the media, businesses, and social movements. Victimology is though not constrained to the study of victims of crime only, but can comprise different provisions of human rights. Victimology is a hypothetical scientific discipline which studies statistics that defines processes and causal associations associated to victimizations. This comprises proceedings prominent to the victimization the victims experience, its aftermath, and the activities taken by society in response to those victimizations. Therefore, victimology consists of study of precursors, vulnerabilities, happenings, influences, retrievals, and replies by people, administrations, and beliefs related to victimizations. Victimology is a simpler procedure. It is the study of the victim or victims of a specific offender. It is defined as the thorough study and analysis of characteristics and may be called victim profiling. Though literature about the victim seemed in various initial works by such criminologists as Beccaria, Lombroso, Ferry, Garofalo, Sutherland, Hentig, Nagel, Ellenberger, Wolfgang, and Schaffer, the perception of a discipline to study victims and the word victimology has its basis with the initial fictions of Benjamin Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn provided the victimology visualization and draft, and as a student, we have trailed his supervision. We currently mention to Mendelssohn as the father of victimology. Victimology is vital in the general investigative procedure since it not only states us who the victims were, their fitnesses and individual history, social behaviors and personality, but also provides ideas as to why they are selected as victims. In several circumstances, the offender will grip back from selecting a victim till one that meets his requirements comes sideways, perhaps permitting him to accomplish some imagination or desire he has. Types of victims. The perpetrator's profile involves his evaluation of the victim. Studying the victim's differentiating abilities is called as victimology. Victimology is basically founding a point of that individual's threat of becoming a victim as a purpose of his or her individual, specialized or social life, processing close awareness of the victim's existence and habits, delivers concepts as why the specific victim has selected at a set time and place. This information divides victims into following three categories. Low-risk victims. They tend to remain close to work and home. They incline not to common places they do not know properly. They lock their entrances at night time. They grip stable works and have numerous friends. Second, medium-risk victims. They may work close to home and lock their doors at night. However, these individuals are indiscriminate and at times venture out at night by themselves. Third is high-risk victims, most of the time living in high-risk conditions. Prostitutes, particularly persons who walk on the lanes, noticeably fall into this group. They typically work during the night hours, interact with strangers regularly, willingly climb into cars with strangers, and therefore are easy targets. Other high-risk activities include drug use, sexually energetic lifestyles, nighttime jobs, and congregations with other people who possess criminal tendencies. Perpetrators choose their particular victims based on their individual fantasies and their victims' susceptibility. Some victims are just grabbed as victims of opportunity. Low-risk victims are less prone to place themselves in vulnerable positions than high-risk victims, though anyone can merely be on the incorrect location at the wrong time. Other victims are swift as they suitable for the role in the criminal's imagination. Committers may devote a little of time, possible days of weeks, planning for the perfect victim, the individual who most possibly matches his fantasy. Other hypothetically vulnerable objectives are unnoticed as they are reasonably right. Psychological autopsy is an important form of victim profiling. A psychological autopsy is done when the method of the victim's death is not indistinct. Criminal investigators are uncertain whether the victim's expiry was unintentional, suicidal, or homicidal. To aid make this resolve, the forensic psychiatrist digs into the victim's school, work, medical, and army histories. The forensic psychiatrist interviews family, friends, and associates. He or she evaluates autopsy, police and witnesses' reports. The objective is to regulate whether the victim was the type of person who was living in a high-stress situation to take his or her own life or living a lifestyle that made him or her easy prey for a killer. Different criminologists have given various forms of victims on the basis of different criteria. First by Mendelssohn, quoted by Krishna and Singh in 1982, has given 6 types of victims according to the degree of their contribution, guilt, and crime. These are: first, entirely blameless sufferers. Example, small babies, offspring who are raped or killed or abducted devoid of their comprehending what is being done to them. Second, victims with negligible guilt, like pregnant women who goes to quacks for abortion and pay for it with their survives. Third, victims more guilty than the offenders, such as those who provoke others to commit crime. Fourth, the most embarrassed kind of victims who commit crimes contrary to others and get injured or destroyed themselves. Example, a rapist who gets murdered by his victim who responds in self-protection. And fifth, faking or imagining victims such as paranoids, overexcited and confused people who give evidence in the courts in order to obtain sentence against an accused person. Second is by Walter Reckless in 1961, has talked of 2 types of victims, reporting and non-reporting victims. The later is one who is unwilling to report because he or she fears reprisals or social consequences of doing so. The former is one who does not bother for the consequences of recording his discrimination but is relatively interested in receiving the offender punished or receiving some relief for his suffering. Third is by Fatah in 1967. He has described 5 types of victims. First, non-participating, latent, provocative, participating, and false victims. Next is by Wolfgang. He has mentioned 5 types of victimization. First is primary victimization, including personalized or single victims. Second, secondary victimization. In this, the victim is an impersonal target of the offender. Example, a robber in a departmental store, a person roaming without a ticket on a roadways, bus, etc. Third, tertiary victimization, which affects the public or the administration of society. Fourth, mutual victimization, which concerns those victims who themselves are offenders in a given mutually consensual act. Example, adultery. And fifth, no victimization, which is an action of insignificant impact where there is no immediately recognizable victim. Next classification is given by von Hentig. The Criminal and His Victim, Yale University Press, New Haven, 1948, has given 4 types of victims. First, victims whose wound might be the price of a greater gain, example in abortion. Second, victims who carry about the unfavorable result partly by their own concurrent effort, example prostitutes. Third, victims who provoke or instigate the offense, example by challenging the opponent to kill him if he can, and in an emotional state of mind the opponent accepts the challenge and attacks. Then fourth, victims who desire the injury. Next classification is by Hentig. He has further classified the attitudes of victims as lethargic attitude, second, submissive or convincing attitude, third, cooperative or contributory attitude, and fourth, provocative or investigative attitude. Next, the US Department of Justice Workplace for Sufferers of Crime identified the following types of victims or victimization: adult molested as child, adult of age group of 18 or older that is sexually abused as a child, adult sexual assault. Sexual offense comprises rape, incest, fondling, exhibitionism or pornography of an adult age 18 or older, aggravated assault, deliberately causing chronic wound by a deadly weapon, unlawful intended struggling, frightening to cause chronic injury with a dangerous weapon, arson, any deliberate or malevolent burning or effort to burn with or without intending to deceive a dwelling, house, public building, motor vehicle or aircraft or personal property of another. Assault, illegal outbreak by one individual on another with or without a weapon that imposes or efforts or threatens to wreak physical injury. Child, any individual who is below the age of 18 or as otherwise defined by state law. Child physical abuse, due to severe beatings, burns, strangulation or human bites, non-accidental injury caused to a child or other adult by his or her parent. Child sexual abuse, these are sexual offences by parents against a child or other adult. Domestic violence, violent acts involving a current or former spouse or domestic partner. DUI or DWI crash, accident involving one or more motor vehicles in which at least one driver was under the influence of alcohol or drugs or was legally intoxicated at the time of the crash. Elder abuse, abuse perpetrated done by a caretaker on an elderly individual who depends on others for support and assistance. Fraud, deliberate deception perpetrated for unlawful or unfair gain. Gang violence, criminal acts committed by a group of 3 or more individuals who regularly engage in criminal activity and identify themselves with a common name or sign. Human sex trafficking, sex trafficking in which a commercial act is induced by force, fraud or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age, or the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud or coercion for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, personage, debt, bondage or slavery. Identity theft, a crime in which an impostor gets the information about the personal information like social security, driver's license numbers in order to impersonate. Other violent crimes and other crimes not listed, not including property crimes, which is the taking of money or property without force or threat of force. Robbery, taking or attempted to take anything of value from the care, custody or control of a person or persons by force or threat or force or violence. Sexual offences, forcible rape, attempted rape, statutory rape, sexual harassment, prostitution, or other unlawful sexual contact and other unlawful behavior intended to result in sexual gratification or profit from sexual activity. Stalking. Any unwanted contact between two people that directly or indirectly communicates a threat or places the victim in fear. White-collar crimes. Non-violent crime for financial gains committed by means of deception by persons with special technical and professional knowledge of business or government. Victim protection. If you are a victim of crime or a witness, you shouldn't be afraid to go to the police or give evidence in court. There are laws and services to protect you. Find out what they are and how they can help you. If you are afraid to come forward, if you have been a victim of crime or witnessed one, you may be feeling upset or worried. You may have doubts about coming forward to the police or giving evidence in the court of law. No law says you have to report a crime to the police or give evidence. But remember, by coming forward, you could bring the criminal to justice. You could also stop the same thing happening to others. You don't have to report the crime to contact a victim. Support a charity that helps victims and witnesses. You can talk things through with them and discuss your options with someone confidentially. The police will keep your details private. If you give a statement about a crime to the police, they will write down your address on the back of it. The defendant or their solicitor will only acquire a replica of the front, so they won't see where you live. Also, victims and witnesses are not generally inquired to provide their addresses out loud in the court. When the police examines a crime, they can give certain facts to local reporters, radio and TV stations. They do this to find out if there are witnesses who could help them solve the crime. However, if you are the victim, they'll normally ask you before they do this. Also, if you have been sexually attacked, they won't pass on any details that could identify you, like your name or address. Protecting you from threats and harassment. It's contrary to the law to intimidate or threaten or bully a witness or anyone else helping the police. If you feel in danger in some way at any time, speak to your witness caution officer or the police officer in charge of that case. If you are truly threatened, call 999. If the pressure proceeds in court, inform your solicitor or a court official who will report it to the police. You can get further assistance if the lawbreaker has been caught, laid in prison, free on bail or sentenced. The criminal court can form a command to halt them approaching near you, threatening you or frightening you again. If they move on, they might suffer another crime and even be put into jail. The police and the Crown Prosecution Service can defend your individuality throughout the investigation and the initial days of a trial. In certain cases, they can even protect your identity during the trial itself. Witness relocation. In special cases, if the threat to you is very serious, then it may be possible to relocate you, move your house to another area where you feel safer. This is organized by the police. Protection if you have to go to the court. There are several of methods by which court can protect you when you have to give an evidence. The law indicates that at any place it is thinkable, you must be given a distinct waiting zone and a chair in court away from the offender's family. If there is no separate area, the court will make other arrangements to keep you safe. You can get extra help if you are under 17 or afraid to give evidence. Also, if you possess a learning or physical incapacity or you are a victim of sexual crime, in such cases, you can inquire the police to apply for special measures. This can include screens to stop you from having to see the defendant, or someone to help you understand what you are being asked. Protection when a criminal is released from prison. In serious cases, the criminal justice system continues to protect victims of crime, even after the offender is released from prison. If they have been put in prison for more than a year for a sexual or violent offense, you will be told when they are about to set free. You will be allotted or given a victim link officer at the probation service. In several cases, you can ask this liaison officer for special terms when the offender is out. For example, this could be a command or a legal order to make certain halt so that they are away from you. Now, the science of victimology. Many persons consider that victimology is an objectively new conception of theories. The discipline essentially eras back to around 1880. Though to be reasonable, victimology turned out to be comprehensive, known to Europe not longer than after World War II. The specific discipline goal is employed in the direction of understanding the association between criminals and the victims. By reviewing victims' facts, experts increase evidence against the criminals, which supports an outlining or identification of the criminal. Trends and statistics give information such as social status, the kind of area someone lives in, work and working conditions, which often plays a significant role in why someone has become a victim. The information also helps us in understanding of victims, the criminals. Local authorities rely on statistics to work towards implementing action that will prevent or reduce diverse types of crimes. Profilers are certain that it is significant to collect details or history of the victim, the victim's source, physical look, traits and features has appreciated data which can be estimated at and after departure of a crime scene. In the occurrence that a number of victims have been established above a sequence of months or years, facts such as this may explain why the victims had become targets. Victims will likely have been chosen because of their surroundings, their physical appearance and capabilities and their social standing. Homeless adults and offspring, prostitutes, refugee workers, homosexuals, unmarried females, nevertheless of age, they will every so often be incapable to protect themselves and incapable of calling for help because of their surrounding or their sensibility. We shall conclude this module with a summary. Victimology is the study of victimization, including the relationships between victims and offenders. Victimology consists of the study of the precursors, vulnerabilities, happenings, influences, retrievals and replies by people, administrations and beliefs related to victimizations. Low-risk victims are less prone to place themselves in vulnerable positions than high-risk victims. A psychological autopsy is done when the method of the victim's death is not indistinct. The police and the Crown Prosecution Services can defend your individuality throughout the investigation and the initial days of a trial. In certain cases, they can even protect your identity during the trial itself. The victim's source, physical look, traits and features are appreciated data which can be estimated at and after departure of a crime scene. Thank you.